Nearly 20 years to the anniversary of the September 11th attack, a Kenyan was indicted in the US for having been among the masterminds of the September 11th attack. And we understand that he was a member of the Al-Shabab militant group, which is mainly based in Somalia. So what does this tell us about Al-Shabab and its ability to attack not just in Kenya or in Somalia or in Uganda, where we have seen it attacked before, but further away outside of these borders that we would call its home?
I think about a decade ago, Al-Shabab pledged allegiance to Al-Qaeda, and that marked the beginning of their globalist, internationalist kind of aspirations by trying to raise their own profile. And so it is not surprising, therefore, that an Al-Shabaab member would be found in a place such as the Philippines, planning attacks against the United States. It is important to note that the Philippines itself has a problem of extremism, especially in the southern part of the Philippines in a place called Mindanao. And so because of this confluence of interests, it's not surprising that a group such as Al-Shabaab that has pledged allegiance to a global jihadist organization would actually try to get involved in an attempt to attack the United States.
So what does this say about Al-Shabaab? Is it a stronger group compared to the group that we know when the first Ugandan troops got into Somalia in 2007?
Al-Shabaab's ability for conventional or larger international attacks is, however, still very limited. But we cannot ignore the kind of global networks that some of its membership has been cultivating with some of the leading and extremely lethal terrorist organizations around the world. And that is why a coordinated response to the terror problem and terror threat, not just on the continent, but around the world, is critical if the problem of terrorism has to be contained.
Interesting you say that, because in the wake of the onslaught that is going on by the military, the Rwanda Defense Forces and the SADC region troops in Mozambique, in the Cabo Delgado region, we have seen attempts to retaliate here in Kenya, in Tanzania and in Uganda, where actually groups which are suspected to be linked to the militant groups inside Mozambique have actually been repulsed. So is it still the same Al-Shabaab, and is this a cause for alarm, back here at home?
It is not surprising, the problem we're having in the Horn of Africa, but it is worrying, and especially given the rising problem of terror in northern Mozambique, in the Cabo Delgado region, which, while the group has been calling themselves Al-Shabaab, it actually has very little connection to Al-Shabaab as we know it. It in fact draws much of its inspiration from certain leaders like Abu Drogo at the Kenyan coast and in Tanzania. And a lot of its leadership has been known to draw from Kenya and Tanzania in particular. But the connection with the Al-Shabaab in Somalia is not very strong. However, the kind of ideology they're trying to spread is more aligned to that of ISIS, which of course then is a cause for concern, I think, for all of us who live in this part of the world.
Speaking of the terror problem in the region and in the world, ahead of the 20th anniversary of the September 11th attacks, September 13th attacks at the Westgate in Nairobi, the Dusit Hotel attack here in Nairobi, what do we know now about terrorism and the war against terror that we didn't know then, that we must now apply if we are going to, moving forward to stop these attacks?
On the eve of September 11, I think one thing that's going to be important is for us to re-examine and reassess the progress made thus far. What we know is that the problem of terrorism and extremism has not only increased, it has proliferated virtually across the entire globe. However, there are certain unique peculiarities to regions that those regions or those nations need to be able to address. Some of them are inspired by local dynamics, but some of them are linked to the international dynamics and international ideologies. So being able to identify which groups is inspired, or what are the root causes or causes that are, or factors that are perpetuating these groups is going to be critical. But I think it's important that generally the efforts at countering this group have to be coordinated. both locally and internationally. Because in the absence of these, it is going to be very difficult to root out groups and extremism that is largely driven by ideologies, but also that exploits local conditions to be able to advance their terrorist interests.
So then with that in mind, are they stoppable? Are these terror networks stoppable, whether it is in Kenya, Somalia, Uganda, the US itself? Are they stoppable?
At this point in time, these attacks are not stoppable, but they are reducible. I think a lot has been done to degrade the ability of major terrorist organizations to conduct conventional warfare. However, they still a big threat when it comes to the kind of sophisticated attacks, guerrilla attacks that the terror groups are undertaking. And so at this point, we should still prepare for the increasing threat of terrorism. However, it is a problem that can be reduced. It has been reduced in many aspects, but it can be degraded further with proper coordination and proper investment, especially in addressing not just the root causes, but also in responding to the changing tactics that these terror groups are employing, both on the African continent and outside.